Welcome to the Healthy Skin Show with Jennifer Fugo, where we're flipping everything you've been told about your chronic skin issues upside down and connecting you with alternative solutions your dermatologist never told you about.
Welcome back to episode number 237 of the Healthy Skin Show. In today's episode, we're going to talk about something called a bioage. This is not about anti-aging, by the way. This is very specific to how your body ages through time, and is it possible that you physically could be younger than the number of years that your body has existed on this planet. So your bioage can be very different compared to your physical age. And I thought that this was an interesting topic because many of us who've gone through chronic health problems and chronic skin issues feel like our physical being has just aged so much due to the stress, the trauma, and all of the things that we've been exposed to with time. And so I felt that this was an interesting topic to explore, and so I hope that you will as well. My guest today is Dr. Kara Fitzgerald. She is a naturopathic physician who runs a clinical practice in Newtown, Connecticut. Dr. Fitzgerald is the author of a new book out called Younger You: Reduce Your Bioage and Live Longer, Better. And she is also the first ever recipient of the 2018 Emerging Leadership Award from the Personalized Lifestyle Medicine Institute in recognition of her work on DNA methylation. As a leading voice in their intersection of nutrition, epigenetics, and aging, Dr. Fitzgerald's work has been featured in media outlets such as Prevention, Fast Company, MSN, Everyday Health, and many more. She received her doctorate from National University of Natural Medicine, and she's also on the faculty of the Institute for Functional Medicine and is an IFM Certified Practitioner. And I also consider her not only a colleague, but also a truly wonderful and brilliant mentor. And just as a sneak peek, while Dr. Fitzgerald is 54 years old at the time of this recording, her bioage is actually 41. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I thought that everyone could benefit from this conversation, and I'm so excited to have her here. I'm so excited to have you back on the show, Dr. Fitzgerald. Thank you so much for joining us again.
It's great to be here. Good to see you.
I know, and we're here today because we're talking about your amazing book called Younger You. And it's huge, by the way. It's huge. It's a really amazing book, and it's an amazing feat because it's interesting. I've known you for so long now, and you've always been focused on how to help with methylation. You always had this interest in methylation, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but thank you so much for sharing the knowledge in this book that you have, because aging is something that we're all concerned about. And just for everybody who's like, aging? Wait, Jen, we talk about skin. What are you talking about aging? Because don't worry, because I think both of us here have a real aversion to the anti-aging movement in general. I think it might be helpful for my audience to just hear your thoughts on that, because that's not what this book is frankly about. I find anti-aging to be this awful marketing device that oftentimes makes us feel bad about ourselves, but that's not what this is about, right?
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really good, important place for us to start. So we all have a chronological age, the amount of, trips around the sun, as David Sinclair says, the amount of birthdays we've celebrated, and we also have a biological age. Biological age is so we can't change our chronological age, but our biological age is how fast we're actually physically aging. And in this, if we have a burden of chronic disease, whatever that is, we're aging faster. In this country, relative to other countries, we're aging faster. What does that mean? I'll give you some statistics. In this country, our average life expectancy is just over 79 years, which is actually less than it used to be. Like we're losing, and of course COVID will influence it, but even without COVID influence, we're losing some of the gains that we made in life expectancy. We're certainly better off than we were 100 plus years ago, but we're actually losing some of the gains. The final 16 plus years of our lives are spent in illness. Like on average, we've got 2 significant illnesses. We're on multiple medications. It's not pretty. Our life in those final years is spent, in hospital and skilled nursing and medication. It's spent really compromised. So life expectancy may be extended, but health expectancy has not also extended along with life expectancy. And just think about, I'm an older first-time mom, and I just think about all of the effort that I've made to build my career and so forth, and like what my daughter will inherit. And I definitely don't want it going to a skilled nursing facility or where I'm propped up on a pillow, kept alive, on multiple medications. That is so deeply unappealing to me, and putting a burden on her to have to care for me and compromise her life because of that. And so, we need to do something. And, so not just the personal financial burden, but we're just heading towards bankruptcy as our population ages. Now, the biggest risk factor for all of these chronic diseases that we develop is aging itself. Biological aging is the biggest risk factor for diabetes, for dementia, for cardiovascular disease, and for cancer. So can we actually do something about the rate of aging? Can we actually do something about biological age? Anybody in our space, in the integrative medicine space, would say, yeah, like if you live these principles, you should be getting younger. We see people, you in your space see people turn around extraordinarily difficult skin conditions all of the time. And I will say, to bring this into skin, yeah, absolutely, the inflammation of these skin conditions would drive aging forward. So it would be a pro-aging, that inflammatory phenomena would be a pro-aging phenomena. And as you reverse them, we should also see that translate, because that these skin conditions are systemic. Sometimes they're local. Once in a while you'll have something that you just need to address locally, but more often than not, you have to address the whole person. Would you say that's true with skin stuff?
Absolutely. It usually is the case. And as I see in my practice, that is often a huge problem, where the mistake is made that it's just on the skin, and in reality, it's a systemic issue, and that the inflammation is being driven from the inside out. Yes, there's outside ways to address things, but we do need to work on the inside. And so this really isn't about necessarily looking younger per se, right? This isn't about looking younger. This is actually changing something at what would you say, like a biochemical or a biophysiologic level?
Yeah, both. You can change physically what you actually look like as you reverse biological age. So we're in this new kind of scientific revolution where we can measure biological age. And so because we can measure it now, we can start to see how different interventions influence biological age. And more and more and more of this science will come out, and this will be more routine for us to think about biological age. I mean, I see maybe in 10, 15 years down the line, we'll probably have a Oura ring that can give us biological age feedback, and we'll know whether something that we're engaging in is pro-aging or not. And not, again, physically, not the vanity piece, but, cellularly, is this driving us towards a shorter health span, a shorter lifespan? Like, is this compromise? Is this making us vulnerable to developing the myriad chronic diseases that we don't want? So we're talking about it. This is a very physical phenomena, and I think we'll know. But the way that we measure biological age is looking at patterns of gene expression. So what genes are on and what genes are off. And it turns out that how we live, again, has a huge amount to say about what genes are on and what genes are off. You mentioned this to me earlier before we hit record, and around we always thought for our disease destiny, for our life, lifespan, et cetera, that it was all about our genetics, the DNA we inherited from mom and dad. What we now know is that it's actually the gene expression, what genes are on, what genes are off. It's the gene expression that influences quality of life and lifespan, health span, diseases, etc. And that is the interface of how we live, what we're doing, and how it influences what genes are on and off. So my book is about a research study that we did using a diet and lifestyle program and its influence on this cellular aging journey as witnessed through gene expression. So yeah, it's very foundational. Let me just give you, just another statistic. Like, if we could improve biological age by a year, there is one estimate that it would save the country $38 trillion. Like, and given that biological age is the biggest risk factor for all these chronic diseases, rather than siloing all illnesses separately, if we put our energy towards helping people age younger, keeping them healthier, we could, by extension, reduce risk for all of these illnesses. So let me stop there and
yes. So here's a question for you, because a lot of my listeners are dealing with chronic, some long-standing, you've probably seen cases of eczema where the person had eczema as a baby. They're now 40, 50 years old. So if someone is listening to this and they're thinking, oh boy, I'm doomed. Like, I'm doomed. The doctor said I probably got these bad genes from my parents that are contributing to my skin issue. And I've been having this inflammatory issue for all my life. Like, is there something, if you're able to slowly get the inflammation under control, are you able then to begin walking back this biological age? Like, are you stuck, or is there hope for everybody listening?
So I want to say a couple of things on this. Like, let's go to this eczema patient or person. Eczema is a modern phenomena, and maybe our parents and grandparents had it, but it's more about which genes are on and which genes are off. It's more about gene expression. It's more about us and how we're living, and about the hand of genes that we were dealt. I mean, think about 100, 200, 300 years ago, eczema wasn't really a phenomena. It just wasn't. So it can't be about genetic changes. I mean, it's more about changes to environment that influence genetic, really actually autoimmunity. So talking about, psoriasis, really, or histamine, hives, et cetera. All of the conditions that you're talking about are phenomena of environment, lifestyle, etc., and much less so the genetic hand that we've been dealt. I mean, just always go back in your mind. Was psoriasis a big entity in the 1700s? It's not to my knowledge. I mean, autoimmunity and certainly allergic disease are very modern phenomena. So if we can find our individual variables contributing to this, we should be able to turn around our skin condition. It is, because it's a systemic inflammatory condition, it is a pro-aging experience. And as we turn it around, as we get better, we should, by extension, be slowing down that aging process. Like, I don't have research off the top of my head, the incidence of eczema and, being, pushing biological age forward. But there is evidence in some of these other conditions, like top of mind would be diabetes. Like, people who are diabetics are 6 to 9 years older than their chronological age. Wow. But it also, just think of the wear and tear over time, the chronic inflammation, and then just the damage happening. But, when you can reverse it, it also stands to reason that you can actually shave off more years. You can reduce biological age more significantly. So if you're older biologically to start, and you correct the imbalance causing that older biological age, you should be able to, bring it back in alignment with where it should be, or ideally even make it a little bit younger.
I wanted to ask you about methylation, because this is that was how I really came to know your work, and you and Romley and your team has done a lot of research over the years on methylation. Yeah. You talk about it in the beginning I don't know, 10 pages or 15 pages of the book repeatedly about methylation within the body cellularly versus methylation with DNA. And so what do you feel is important for people to know? Because a lot of times they get hung up with just having MTHFR, that genetic SNP, and they think that that's all that really matters. But my sense from your book is that this is a lot bigger than just having one genetic SNP.
Yeah, for sure. So I became interested in DNA methylation, and that was where my focus was around the time you and I first connected. There's a lot of attention in our field towards MTHFR, towards using high dose B vitamin, towards pushing methylation forward, maybe diagnosing methylation cycle issues and trying to change it. My question, some years ago was, are we doing this in a way that's not helpful? And that led us, Romilly and myself, Romilly was our nutrition director at the time, and now she's actually just written a book that will come out soon, I think in May. It's a great book on nutritional immunology. You have to have her on. It'll be awesome. Her book is just fabulous. Anyway, used to be our nutrition director. And so she and I designed this program for a food and lifestyle forward way to address methylation because we had some concern around imbalanced methylation, or the ways that we were approaching it with isolated vitamins as potentially harmful. So I wanted, diet and lifestyle intervention is only favorable in methylation. There's no downside, from any angle that we were able to find in the literature. And we did it with thinking about DNA methylation and balancing DNA methylation. And so our study, we were given a grant by Methylation, an unrestricted grant by a professional supplement company to see whether or not we were changing DNA methylation using our diet and lifestyle program. And our first extraordinary finding was, beyond our wildest dreams. Like, not only did our participants tolerate and do well with the diet and enjoy the diet and lifestyle program, we were able to reverse biological age as measured by methylation. So I should back up and say, I should back way up, Jen, but gene expression, going back to our whole conversation around gene expression, the field is called epigenetics, epi above, genetics, the genes. And there's a number of different ways we biochemically regulate which genes are on and which genes are off. So our life and how we live our life influences what genes are on and off, but our experiences are actually, then translated to these biochemical marks that turn genes on and off. And chief among these is DNA methylation. So methylation is a major regulator of what genes are on and what genes are off. And this is how we measure biological age. And this can help us see whether we're aging really fast or whether we're not. Is our age matched to our is our bio age matched to our chronological age, or is it going too fast, or is it nice and slow where we want it? And so our program was designed around optimizing DNA methylation. We hoped that we changed biological age, but I wasn't holding my breath on that. I was confident that we would change DNA methylation. I was confident our intervention was robust enough to favorably change gene expression, but would it actually move the biological age clock? It really hadn't been done. I mean, up until that time, there were only 3 other studies. Ours was the 4th publication. And the first one to show changes was a year-long intervention using growth hormone, metformin, DHEA, and vitamin D. Like, it was an intense study for a long period of time.
And it was only done in men, correct? There was just male participants.
Yes. Well, I mean, I have to say our study itself was only male participants as well, and we can talk about that. I'm like, but it's just because of it. I'll walk through why that was. I did not anticipate that we would be reversing biological age certainly to the extent that we did. And so as compared to the control group who didn't receive a treatment intervention, our participants in the 8-week time got over 3 years younger, which,
wow.
it just got a ton of attention because it's never been shown before. It was new science. My colleagues are very supportive and excited. Dr. Dale Bredesen, Dr. David Perlmutter, people who are real kind of leaders in our field. Dr. Jeff Bland, who's been a longtime mentor of mine, continue to be very excited just because it was the first time it's been done, and it will change. So it's opened the door to diet and lifestyle interventions, changing gene expression profoundly. Like it's changed. We'll design studies with an eye towards what's happening with gene expression in a way that we never have before.
And so with that said, I do think it's fair because we have a lot of ladies that listen to this show. Why is it that women aren't generally included? And could that mean that maybe the impacts might be more or less than
more
what
impactful?
than what you saw?
I have the same annoyance on other studies, like why women aren't included. We've definitely been understudied in a way that's really offensive. In fact, my friend Sarah Gottfried published a book, Women, Food, and Hormones, where, she prescribes a keto diet specifically for women, and you can't do the classic keto diet that's been researched because it's in men, and our body physiology is different. And it is certainly annoying. So I share that irritation and the limitation of studies on women. And what I'll say is that our study was a pilot study. We had 20 people in our control group, and we had 20 people in the study group. The study was very expensive. We hired a clinical research center to administer it. It was just rigorously done out at my alma mater university, National University of Natural Medicine, the Health Gut Research. Actually, Health Gut. You just interviewed Heather Zwicky, so she started Health Gut Research Institute. And so we hired them to run our study, and they're just an amazing research institute, and they do really high quality work. It's not cheap. And so we could only have limited numbers to be able to do it financially. And if we had women, our target population was middle age, so 50 to 70. And that's because that's when we start to see the influence of aging pretty profoundly on DNA methylation, on gene expression. So we wanted to get right in there at middle age and look. If we had included women in the population of 50 to 72, we would have had premenopause women, so women who are still cycling regularly, still ovulating. We would have had perimenopause, most of them probably, and we would have clearly had postmenopausal women. And so again, it's the complexity of the hormone picture that Sarah talks about in her book would have made our small population impossible to tease out what was happening from the influence of different hormonal
impacts
pictures within our population, and it would have, it's a disappointment, but it would have muddied our results, and it would have made reporting on what we found difficult. So just given that men are endocrinologically relatively simple, we had to use them. We do have approval for a new study that we are recruiting for. This is a participant-funded study based in our app. We've got an app called 3YY. And this will include everyone. And of course, women are there. I can speak from experience. So I've been doing the program for years now, and we've prescribed it here in clinical practice. So we've been using it in women for years here, and we see really great results. Biological age has not been a huge tool we've used in practice, just simply because it wasn't available. These are new tools available to us. But I've been able to access mine, and now they're becoming more available. So I can say in our clinic, and I talk about this in my book, we see it beneficial across the board, and we layer it in. We use the principles of the program in any issue. So anybody presenting to us here in our practice will get some element of the Younger You program into their prescription, their diet and lifestyle prescription. And women do fabulous with it. And for me, my biological age has consistently been younger than my actual chronological age and continues to be. So I think as we get more data and study women, it'll be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see us as fabulous responders.
Well, so you talked a lot about the things that you could do from a diet and lifestyle perspective that I know my audience will be really interested in. You mentioned something in the book called epinutrients, which is probably a term that they haven't heard of before. So
no one knows.
So what are epinutrients? I noticed you picked out some certain foods over others. So what are those like special, I guess, epinutrient rich foods that you really love?
So epigenetics. So epi above genetics genes. So these epinutrients are nutrients that influence epigenetics, and specifically DNA methylation, because that's where we just really hung our hat. So all of these epinutrients have some evidence of favorably helping with gene expression, specifically through DNA methylation. So we want, sorry about that. We want to bathe ourselves in sufficient methylation. As we age, we don't methylate as well, so our total ability to methylate drops, and it becomes disordered. It happens. It's just like it's messed up. It makes us vulnerable to all of the diseases. I mean, it's like a raw deal, quite frankly. It's like a raw deal. You could look at DNA methylation patterns in somebody who's older, and you could look at the same patterns in somebody with cancer, and there's some shared imbalances. Like, you can see how we become vulnerable to the chronic diseases of aging as we age. You can actually see it happening. And so we want to stop that. We just want to nip it in the bud. So we need foods that will help us methylate, and that includes like beets and greens and seeds and nuts. It includes eggs for people who can tolerate eggs. I know in skin conditions, routinely, there are problem foods that people have to avoid. I have 2 psoriasis cases, and eggs were issues. Like, I can think of 2 cases in my practice, and eggs were massive deal breakers. So you have to avoid what you're sensitive to, clearly. But you eat what you can eat. For people who are eating meat and are open to eating liver is a methylation superfood. It's huge. You don't even have to, it's so rich, you don't even have to do it every day. So if you can eat liver maybe 3 times a week, that would be great. So we want methylation packed foods. Shiitake mushrooms, maitake, enoki, even button mushrooms are good. And then there's these other class of epinutrients that seem to direct where methylation happens. So you're not just pushing it out there and letting, and willy-nilly, you're kind of directing the traffic. At least that's what we think was happening and what we saw in our study. And these nutrients are the beautiful polyphenols, the bright colors in all of our fruits and veggies, like quercetin or luteolin or lutein, resveratrol in grapes, curcumin and turmeric, those beautiful catechins in green tea. Foods that we know are healthy, foods that have been used in traditional diets the globe over forever, turns out that they help with gene expression. Isn't that cool? And
it
probably
is really cool.
They're anti-inflammatory, they're anti-cancer, they're antioxidant, they're detoxing benefits, I think, may have to do, at least in part, with their ability to regulate what genes are on and what genes are off. So these together,
you mentioned like rosemary a few times in the book. What's the deal with rosemary?
I know rosemary is just sort of a fun, rosemary has something called rosmarinic acid, which is just fabulous, like all of the other polyphenols. I happen to love it, and it's easy and it's fun. And so we've been calling it out as a great longevity nutrient. But curcumin is right up there, green tea. What I would say, research really suggests that we want what they call a combinatorial approach. We want each forkful of food to be packed with these beautiful epinutrients. And there's a 30-page epinutrient appendix in the back. Yes. And the most picky human on the planet would be able to go back there and highlight maybe at least a dozen or more foods that they're already eating. So you can go and see what you're doing right and what you'd be willing to add. And there's no reason why each meal in a given day can't be packed with these important nutrients.
So I want to ask, because this came to mind as you were talking, and you're mentioning I think the only animal product that you mentioned that was like, well, you said eggs first, but then you also said liver. And so, we have this whole like group of movement. We'll just say a movement of people that do like more like carnivore style eating, and saying that plant foods cause you to hold on to oxalates and all sorts of things, and it's highly inflammatory. But yet here you have research showing that these foods actually reduce your bioage and help with DNA methylation. Do you have any response to somebody who has been thinking that maybe doing like carnivore for life is a better way? Like, any thoughts? What would you say?
I eat meat, and this diet, we have a vegan version in the book, a vegan/vegetarian version for folks who are very committed to no animal product. So I definitely eat animal products. I was doing an interview in Iowa farm country, and we were talking about, I was like, I won't kick a really good steak off my plate once in a while, but it is very plant forward. This is very vegetable dense. Most of the food that you're going to be seeing on your plate in a given day will be veggies, and then, there'll be some limited fruits, and then followed by, proteins, and, this could obviously be animal. And there's a decent amount of fat in it as well. I am not aware of there being any good longevity data on, sort of like a carnivore only approach. I mean, it will help obviously put the one into ketosis. It'll help with muscle and, perhaps, and, blood sugar, in the short term, but we know that it changes the microbiome if we go to animal protein forward. Yeah. There's fallout, and it's just, I think that the fallout limits its utility in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to look at it, because I always think about, too, the way that everyone says, no, this diet's the best, this diet's the best. And I just personally, I feel like there's so much research that shows that having a varied diet is really important, and that not one way of eating suits one person, but you can incorporate in a lot of these ingredients into different cuisines and utilize their benefits. But if you don't have some of these like kind of superfood type, I don't even like calling them superfoods, to be honest with you, but these epinutrients in your diet, you are kind of limiting the ability of your body to have access to it. Like, you're just not going to get them in if you don't consume them in those foods. It's just not possible.
For sure. And I mean, the fallout from a carnivore centric diet is, it's just there, and changes to the microbiome, and ultimately just driving imbalances in other ways.
And a lot of inflammation. At least that's what I've seen in testing. There's usually a ton of inflammation. A lot of inflammatory markers are through the roof. There's a lot of inflammation coming from the GI tract because of those changes to the microbiome. And having some of these mushrooms are so helpful. Like, they've got beta glucans. They're really good for the microbiome. They're great FODMAPs. There's so many great, wonderful things and beets are good for your liver, and just so many good benefits to having a variety of beautiful foods in your diet that also bring a lot of color and those intense flavors as well. So it's great. And I wanted to ask you too about consistency, because you have this whole thing. You were saying diet and lifestyle is now showing us that it can really move the marker here. But I used to be of the mindset that if I didn't have, for example, an hour to go to the gym, that I just wasn't going to go. And it wasn't until I seriously had, I basically couldn't walk because my back went out, and I had a huge herniation in my lower back that I was unable to do long spurts of any type of movement at all, sometimes even just move from one floor to the next, that I had to take it down a step and focus on showing up consistently, but in small doses. And what I found was that my maybe 5 minutes of tolerance to exercise grew to 10 to 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and I was able, just on focusing on being consistent, to make more gains than not showing up at all. So can you talk about the consistency piece in terms of maybe the diet, but also the lifestyle and the movement piece as well?
Yeah. So when we're looking at gene expression, our habits will ultimately sort of win as far as what genes are on and off. So consistently poor habits will bias our genetic expression towards something that's less favorable, pro-aging, pro-inflammatory, et cetera. Whereas consistently good habits, appear to bring about the opposite. So I want to say that the good news is that, using exercise as an example, one experience of exercise, so going out and doing one activity can change gene expression favorably. So you can get some benefit from just one single experience, but the habit over time, and it doesn't have to be crazy. You just have to get in there and do it. Our exercise prescription in the study was very modest, but that habit over time has the profoundly sort of longevity promoting, anti-aging, chronic disease inhibiting, anti-cancer benefit. So it's the habit over the long time that will allow more and more genes. Cell division is happening all of the time, and those genetic patterns are either maintained or changed during cell division. And so the better, more consistent habits we have, the better genetic information we're going to be passing down to cell division after cell division after cell division in our bodies, to hopefully make us biologically younger, reduce inflammation, reduce risk of various diseases. So habits over the long term will definitely yield the best benefit as far as biological age and longevity and all of the good things that we want. But even just starting on the journey is important as well.
It is. So in terms of, like you said, you did actually require some movement in with this, and you found that to be helpful. Can you give us a sense of what that type of movement looked like?
So the research on exercise and gene expression is just massive. I mean, it's anti-aging. It's just potently anti-aging. Too much exercise can be pro-aging, so don't overdo it. You don't need to overdo it. Not exercising is very pro-aging, so it's a U-curve. Too much exercise is pro-aging, so you don't want to go from couch to CrossFit, and not exercising is very pro-aging, both. So you want the sweet spot, the bottom of the U. In our study, we prescribed just 30 minutes, a minimum of 30 minutes, 5 days a week, doing whatever folks wanted to. And their perceived exertion should be 60 to 80% of max. 60% of max is maybe a little bit of sweating, maybe breathing's a little bit heavier, but I can still talk. So you can go walk with a friend and chit chat away, or, go on a walk or a bike ride like I do. And sometimes I'll talk on the phone, or, just so you're not going crazy hard, and do whatever you want and just do it for 30 minutes. My mom gardens, that's her thing. Or, maybe she'll walk around the block and chat with the neighbors or something like that. In our study, a couple of the guys started walking to work because, the study took place in the city of Portland, which is pretty walker friendly, and just simple stuff like that.
Okay. So that is helpful. I think that gives people some idea. I oftentimes think everyone thinks they have to start this enormous exercise program. And that was like, that was actually for me physically too daunting. And like I said, it might have just been, all right, I can do like some bicep curls today and something simple, and I wasn't sweating a ton, but I was getting a little warm, and that was good. And for some clients, I'm like, look, could you do some slow flow yoga and do what you can do? Maybe it's just walking up and down your stairs a few times and walking around the house and the block. And I like that this is something doable for everyone, so that it's not some massive time commitment, but it's also not expecting you, for those who have injuries and other issues, being able to be super active. They can actually do this. It's doable.
I would say we want to enter into this where we're at, just where we're at. Stress reduction is another huge piece. And same thing, we prescribed a little bit of a meditation to our study participants because meditation is very anti-aging. Stress is very pro-aging. Stress is exquisitely, potently pro-aging. Stress is a major player with skin conditions as well. So anything we can do to turn the volume down on stress is really essential. Sometimes for folks who don't meditate, I'll prescribe just like a 1 minute, or just I was talking to somebody earlier today who goes into when they're going in the elevator, which they need to do at their work, that triggers them to think about breathing, and they'll do a couple of deep breaths during that time. And that's going to turn the volume down on stress. So we just need to start wherever we're at.
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, I will say that this is a great book. I will say that. The Younger You book is amazing.
Oh, thanks, Jen.
For those of you who want to see the cover, here you go, who are watching the video here. I honestly think that this is a great toolkit to be able to add in, again, where you're at. If you can't do a particular food because you have an allergy or sensitivity or something, that's fine. You just pick the things that you can do and integrate that in and learn how to utilize these tools within your own daily life to help support that biological, it's not bio age. We're doing so it's not chronological age, the bio age. We're helping to reduce our bio age so that ultimately the idea is to live a better quality life as we age, because it's a big deal.
Yes.
Huge, big deal. So,
yes, that's right.
But Dr. Fitzgerald, we'll put the links to how everybody can get a copy of your book to your website. You've got a great podcast for practitioners to listen to as well. And I want to make sure that everybody can connect with you. And you've got a great Instagram as well. You do a lot of like really short, punchy videos with lots of information in them for people to check out. But thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you talking about your book and the research that you guys have found. And congratulations.
Thank you so much. It was really nice to connect with you today, Jen.
I hope that this conversation has given you some hope that you can turn back that bio age, even though you may have had years of exposure to topical steroids and other medications and other traumas and stressors in your life. It is possible, and this book is an excellent resource to help you with that. You can find all of the links to purchase your book, as well as everything else that we've discussed here in this episode, over at skinterrupt.com/237. You can also leave your questions and comments about this particular discussion there so we can keep the conversation going. If you found this topic fascinating, please make a point to share this episode with someone you know who would find this equally interesting. Then head on over to your podcast platform of choice, rate and review The Healthy Skin Show, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. That way you never miss a weekly dose of inspiration, hope, research, and all of those alternative strategies to help you rebuild healthy skin. And let's connect over on Instagram. If you're there, I'm at Jennifer Fugo. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.